There is an old Islamic story about a very wise woman. One day she was hiking in the mountains and found a valuable, precious stone. She picked it up and put the stone into her bag. The next day she was approached by another traveler who was hungry. When she opened her bag to give the man something to eat, he noticed the stone and said, "Please give me that precious stone." Without hesitating, she did. The man went away feeling very lucky because he knew how valuable the stone was and knew that it would secure him a good future for the rest of his life. A few days later, however, he began to think. He returned to the wise woman and gave the stone back to her, saying, "I know how valuable this stone is, but I am giving it back to you now in the hopes that you will give me something far more valuable, far more precious. Please give me that spirit inside of you that prompted you to give away the stone." What a beautiful lesson. Inside that woman was the spirit of generosity, the spirit of detachment, the spirit of true wisdom, and this man recognized that as far more valuable than any precious stone. To be detached from possessions is to recognize their true value. A rich young man wanted to follow Jesus, but when he asked what he must do, Jesus told him he must get rid of everything and give the proceeds to the poor. The young man went away sad because he was not willing to part with his possessions. The great Lebanese-American poet Khalil Gibran gives perhaps the best definition of generosity. Generosity, he says, is not giving me what I need more than you do, but it is giving to me that which you need more than I do. Giving everything, giving of our very selves. When the Christ tells us how difficult it is for the rich to attain the reign of God, he says famously that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the reign of God. Our possessions blind us to higher things. Anything to which we are attached, anything we are not willing to part with, enslaves us and blinds us. There were many people in the days of Jesus who wished to follow him and could not because of what they possessed. Some of these were the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day. What they possessed was perhaps not riches, but an interior pride, a self-righteousness. They knew they were following every command. They knew they had it right. How dare this upstart teacher come around and show them something new? They were not willing to part with what they believed they had. This rich young man could not follow Jesus either, because he was not willing to part with what he had in his hands. We all have things we are very reluctant to part with. The things of the Spirit, the things of our hearts and our heads are sometimes more difficult to part with than the things in our hands. What about our prejudices? How difficult it is to part from these. Our preconceived notions of God. What about our self-pity, our hatreds, our anger? What about our pride, our guilt, our shame? Are we willing to part with all of this in order to discover something higher, in order to attain the things of God? Or are we rather blinded by the things we believe we have? The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu writes, "The unwanting soul sees what is hidden. The ever-wanting soul sees only what it wants." When we are always wanting something, that is the only thing we can see, and we have no room for anything else. When we are attached to anything, whether it be our physical possessions or our spiritual possessions, we have no room for anything higher. It is detachment we need. This story has always been a difficult one for people to accept, because so many so-called religious people, in particular those of our own country, regard material wealth as a sign of God's blessing. We look upon rich people and say they have been blessed. We look upon the poor and think they have been cursed. How different from the thinking of Jesus. We rejoice in the things we have because we believe that we possess them. But we attain true wisdom, true union with God, when we begin to realize that our possessions have all along been possessing us. What a moment of liberation when we finally come to this realization and are able to detach ourselves from what we think we have. Our wealth, our anger, our pride, yes, even our good name, are all things that possess us. A wise old nun once told me, "Once you lose your good name, you are a totally free person." How often have I found the truth in that? Jesus goes on to enumerate, don't be attached even to your home, even to your father or mother, even to your own life. To be unattached to anything we think we have is to be open to the things God can give us. So instead of seeing the blessing of God in the rich person, let us rather see God's blessing in that person who is able to give away everything, absolutely anything. Let us stop clinging to the things we think we possess, so that we may truly possess and be possessed by God.